Hello, my name is Erika, I'm a knitter from Brazil, and you are watching my 7th podcast episode. Today, we're going to talk about a few whips and no finished objects and mostly very nice acquisitions that I had last week. First, what I'm wearing. This is my seed stitch pullover by Rosemary Drysdale. It's from Vogue Knitting in late winter 2008, I believe, and it is my first ever knitted sweater for myself. It's oversized. I knitted a size XL because I knitted it in a very much smaller pair of needles. The original pattern used 12mm needles. I used 8mm needles, which corresponded to my yarn. I used a fluffy yarn. There is a lot of polyamide here. I will talk to you about this project in the proper video about my garments, but just to let you know what I'm wearing here. So let's start with my oldest whip, which is my vintage cardigan. You can see I have some progress here. I took it in my trip last week, and then I made some progress in traveling in the bus, and then a little more progress after I came back at home yesterday and today. You can see we have almost one complete sleeve. I finished my first skein from the skeins I made, right, from that unraveled yarn, and I have to join new yarn here to finish the sleeve. I have 15 inches here, 15 and a half inches. I don't remember how many centimeters because since this pattern is in inches, I decided I'm going to measure it in inches due to those problems with the gauge and so on. In this sleeve, I still have to make 2 more increased sections. One is pretty close and the other not so far too. And then I have to knit straight until it has 18 inches, and I start to shape the cap here on the top, right? If you saw my last short, you saw that I had seamed this sleeve to see if it would fit, and it did. So I followed up with the project. Apart from that, I have almost the entire cuff of the other sleeve ready. The cuff is supposed to be 3 inches, so you can see it's a little bit over half of it, you can see. But I may finish this today too, and then follow up with the second sleeve. It's moving slowly, but it's moving, and that's more than I can say about this project for most of the year. The second whip that I have to show you, and the one in which I have worked the most in the previous week, last week I didn't work in anything, but in the previous week was my Margot Blouse by Fable Knitwear. In our last podcast episode, I think I hadn't even started it yet, but I did now, and you can see I made through the entire yoke, and you can see that I have split it for the sleeves here. I casted it on and I just couldn't stop knitting it. It was pretty addictive, quite pleasant to knit with this mercerized cotton. You can see that I have very little yarn now. I don't know if this is half the skein that I had originally. The estimated amount of yarn for my size was 460 meters. Here I'm supposed to have 1000 meters of this thin yarn, so if I'm holding it double, 1500 meters. So I was supposed to have enough for the entire garment, but I'm a little skeptical. I know, however, that what consumes more yarn is this piece, the yoke, right? I have a little bit to knit here, very little, and in the other sleeve I have the body to finish, which is about the same length that I have now, maybe a little more, and I have to pick up for the ruffles in the sleeves and in the neckline, and ruffles take a lot of yarn. That's why I'm skeptical about this being enough, but I'm going to keep knitting it quickly, not only because it's a test knit, it has a deadline, but also because I'm a little bit concerned and I want to solve the doubt about the yarn chicken here. You can see that I can show you now a little bit of the cardigan. It has this interesting shoulder detail here. She has this in a lot of her most recent patterns, Fable Knitwear. It's very beautiful. It gives a very tailored impression to the look. I think my increases for the sleeve here are not perfect because also one of the lace, it fell right in the corn, and to be honest, I wouldn't advise this pattern for a beginner in the state that it is now. Maybe if she refines the writing, I should say that this pattern already had The test knit started in the beginning of May, I believe, about May 7, and it already had like, I don't know, 10 versions with corrections during the process. So I suppose she will modify a lot of stuff, not on the garment but on the writing, until it gets to a final product, the pattern. You can see the lace is here, but you won't be able to see it very perfectly because it hasn't been blocked yet. But it looks very cute. I have a picture from the day in which I split it for sleeves, and here it is. That's how it's looking. It's looking very nice. I think it will be a beautiful cardigan when it's finished. And one of my acquisitions, it is the buttons for this. I have another of these bags. My boyfriend bought it for me. He bought most of what I will show you today. These were gifts from my boyfriend. And these two, we agreed that black with golden would look cute, and I hope it will be a beautiful set of buttons for these cardigans. I believe might be finished in our next podcast episode. Let's see. My last current whip, which is ongoing, is my temperature blanket. I won't show it to you today. What I have new to tell you about it is that I have woven in the ends for all of that I had joined, and I have acquired the yarn, the orange yarn. You will notice that it is not the same exact yarn. This one that I had been using is Nina, and this one is Familia, which is another yarn. It only comes in 40 gram skeins, and I have 3 of them. I only found 2 here, but the third is somewhere else. I think 3 will be enough to start making the ones that I hadn't made yet. I made only one of them yesterday. I have a lot of those centers, you see, to join the other colors. I think one of them will be probably spent already with what I have to finish. It's the same color, it's the same number, it's the same manufacturer, the same composition, and the same text, which is the way Brazilians measure the thickness of the yarn. So I don't know what's different between them. I suppose perhaps it's the fact that one only comes in 40 grams skeins and this one comes in 40 or 100, or it's the twist. I'm not sure. But in the blanket it won't be noticeable, so I was okay with bringing this one. Why did I get the yellow and the green? Because I had been using them a lot, and that's how much I have of the ones that I had ongoing. So they will be finished soon, especially the yellow, and I better prevent more yarn chicken, right? However, I still have to buy the dark blue, because the dark blue was my coldest color. And I don't know if you remember, in the beginning of the year I said I won't need it until July about that, but I ended up needing it in May, because the place where we went to was quite cold. We got 4 degrees Celsius. It doesn't look like much for people who live maybe in Russia, in those very cold places where you get negative degrees. However, in Brazil, since we don't have heating, this is pretty cold. And I loved it. I should say, I really enjoyed the day in which we got 4 degrees. But I will have more colorful hexagons, because I will have some with light blue center, some with the second row light blue, and some with dark green, some with even the dark blue that I had to buy. Only one by now. I probably will have more of those now in June and then July. I'm recording this in June 1st, so the next months I should have more of the blues. Not so much too. I think yellow will still be present and light green too. And moving on to acquisitions, let me show you 2 other yarns that were bought along with those for future projects that you already heard about those, at least one of them. Remember my wool yarn in very dark brown? The last time you saw it, I had a little swatch in crochet too, but I have unraveled the swatch. You can see it's wrapped here, and I will do it all at once when I finally get to it. I have gained the yarn for the border. Remember how I said I wanted this yarn fluffy border, the hem edge, I think. So you can imagine this will be the composition of the hat, kinda. Of course not like that, but you know, you will have the tube top, kinda like basket, and then the border in this very, very fluffy yarn. This is 60% polyamide, which I think is nylon, and 40% acrylic. It's very, very soft, not super easy texture, but I will probably work with this in crochet, this in knitting. I'm waiting for the inspiration to strike me so I can do it kinda quickly. Not for a rush, but just because I need to be in the mood to think this, and also because crochet, sometimes I like to start and finish and be done with it. That's it. We have, I hope, enough to make the entire project now. And the last yarn acquisition is for another test knit. If you saw the last short I posted, you know already that I signed up for another test knit by Fable Knitwear, another summery actually test knit for Agnes camisole, which is a camisole inspired in Edwardian style. So I was tempted and I signed up. At first I intended to use stash yarn, right? The dark blue from this same yarn, I would hold it double. I already knew that with this yarn I got the gauge that I needed for this project, the Agnes camisole, but then I decided that I really wanted to stick to inspiration. Edwardian camisoles, I didn't visualize it in darker colors. It seems to me that as most of these were done with fabric, cotton, linen, it was mostly in light fabrics. So I decided I was going to get this white, pure white. You know, I knit somehow often with pure white because I prefer it to off-white for myself. And it's not the same yarn, it's O.N.T. We have already knitted with this one a couple times for the Margot Blouse and for my June top light. It's quite a pleasant yarn to work with. I don't know that I am going to get the same gauge, but I'm almost wanting to go without swatching for this one. I'm thinking about it yet. I need the needles that I'm using to this one, so that's another motivation for me to finish this soon. And then cast on, and the deadline is the end of July and beginning of August, which is the same deadline of that one, pretty considerable. So I don't think I will have a problem. The needles recommended for this yarn is actually the needles recommended for the pattern, so I think I will be fine. This is a fingering weight mercerized cotton, and I think it will suit the project. If I really love this project, I might think about making it in other colors, in darker colors even, but I think a white tank top is always something that we could wear. Before we move on to the most exciting part of today's podcast, let me show you just another acquisition that was made along with the buttons for the Margot Blouse. It is this, there were two. I didn't bring the other, but it's somewhere in my house. And you know why I picked it. I wanted to make what I intended with this headband, to make it look like a vintage turban. And I have already attached it with black thread, you can see here. I made it on purpose like that because if I didn't like it, I could just rip it. And maybe I will, let's see. On camera it doesn't look that bad, but also it doesn't give the presence that I expected it would give. Maybe I needed it to be bigger, or maybe I needed it to be more plump. It's kind of flat, and I think it's kind of a waste to use this button and the other one here. So I think I will remove it and leave it without the button as it was before, and I will use this and its pair as decoration in a future vintage pattern. I really like the button, but I don't think it fits. It wasn't what I was imagining. Although this looks good, but only for a camera. I wouldn't leave the house like that. Well, finally then, let's talk about the most exciting acquisitions of today, and I will mash it up a little bit with the off the needle segment because I will talk about my tree. I'm sorry that I didn't warn you in the community tab, but I mentioned it in my last short that we wouldn't have podcast episode last week because I was going to travel, and that's what happened. Me and my boyfriend, we went to the city of Curitiba in Brazil, and it's the state of Paraná. If you live in Brazil or if you're planning to visit, consider visiting Curitiba, especially if you are an introverted person that likes a cold climate. Used bookstores, used clothing stores, and also yarn stores and libraries, museums, cultural stuff to see. parks, and a lot of organization. You can find all of that in this city. It's the third time we visit, and we really enjoy there because we like all of that. And in the third time, we still saw things that we hadn't seen before, and visited a lot of things mostly that we hadn't seen before. And also there is still more to see in future visits or whenever. There was in the past, I know, some knitting group named Tricô Curitiba, which means knit Curitiba. You can find their channel in YouTube. I will link it below. They published a lot of tutorials for people to knit. I think they had encounters. They had a website too with knitting patterns and stuff. And I don't know if they still exist as a group, but I do know that people knit in Curitiba because I saw people wearing handmade stuff. We can not always tell, but we often can tell. So I pointed them out for my boyfriend, like, this one is wearing hand knit sweater, this one is wearing a hand knit hat. Some of them my boyfriend recognized by himself because he is familiar with my stuff. And hand knit stuff, it's a cozy sensation to see people in knitwear. And they were in knitwear because the days that we spent there were pretty cold. One of the days had the lowest degree was 4 degrees. And then the other day, the entire day remained between 6 and 14 degrees. We were walking in the streets and a lot of wind came to our faces, and people were wearing long scarves and coats and boots and all that stuff, which I really, really like. I prefer winter to summer any day of the week. So that's it. We had a lot of fun. I didn't knit at all during my stay there. We were just walking a lot and seeing everything and tasting good food and watching stuff. Very, very, very relaxing days, which we were in need of. So I didn't knit there, but I was thinking about knitting. And not only when I visited the yarn stores, which I visited 3. The things that I showed today were from 3 different yarn stores: Svita, Armarinhos Safira, and Armarinhos Voluntários. I guess I still visited Armarinhos Ondori, and there are more. There are a lot of yarn stores which are more like craft yarn stores. I told you already, we very rarely to never find actual yarn stores as you have in other countries, those that sell wool and stuff. It's mostly cotton and acrylic, but still very nice places. And I know, for example, where I can find more yarn to make another sample of my Colette tee with Maria yarn, this one, which I wore there, and I love this top. Since I finished it, it's one of my most beautiful, classy, and I really want to knit another, or maybe a couple of others in other colors, and now I know where I can find the yarn for it. But I didn't bring it this time because it would be a lot of yarn. I'm not going to knit more summer stuff by now. And I hope the yarn stays there until I buy it. But I think so because people are not knitting summer stuff here. Right now, we are in a cold weather. So without further ado, among the things that we visit were used bookstores. And when I go to those, I always search for vintage knitting stuff. And I did find a lot of stuff from the 60s and the 70s. There is also something from the 80s and 90s there, but my emphasis was in the oldest, right? I did find a couple magazines from the 50s. A magazine in Spanish from Mexico, La Familia, and another in Italian, but both weren't in one of the best bookstores, and also they didn't have many knitting or crafting even the patterns in them, so I gave preference to picking the ones that I couldn't find anywhere. That also explains why I didn't buy like Brazilian magazines from the ones that I already collect, like Tricô and Nina. I found some of them. I found Verena, I found Interweave Knits, but Interweave Knits is very young. They were from the 2010s and 2000s. The designs weren't my favorites from them, so I passed on them, and I passed on the Brazilian magazines from the 80s and 90s because those I can find more often. This not, and let me show you that. Well, there is a lot of stuff. This is a magazine from the 60s, precisely 1968, a little booklet actually, and you can see the yarns that they had then. It's from the Receitas Pingouin, which is one of the yarns that are still sold in Brazil. They don't sell wool anymore as they did, I think only a couple yarns, but you can see here, these are the yarns they had then. And you have Familia here, which is this one. So nice, they still have it. It's acrylic, but it's nice to see this connection with the past. They also have this one, Cristal. All the other ones are extinct. And here you can see very 60 stuffs, 68 here, right? You can see those poses. If you don't know how to date a vintage magazine, apart from the fashions themselves, you can look at the poses, because in the 30s they will pose like classy, you know, seated or on their foot, holding their bags like that, very uptight. In the 40s the poses will be very dramatic, like that, and in the 50s sometimes there will be a man in the background, and in the 60s they will have this very weird A-line pose. They're making like some sort of a triangle with posing. And in the 70s you have the triangle too, but they also will have more stroboscopic, more weird poses, like with one foot lifted up and that kind of thing. I will show you later. But you can see 60s always like that, always the triangle. I don't know, maybe they wanted to emphasize their silhouettes, because you can see they have a lot of A-line dresses in the 60s, like this one, see? A-line dresses. They liked that silhouette, I don't know why, but you can see they have a lot of stripes, a lot of bright colors here, a lot of bright colors. 60s cardigans or sweaters, they had also a lot of turtlenecks. I love the turtlenecks from the 60s. It's one of the few things I like from that decade. You can see this has kind of a 60s turtleneck, because turtlenecks from the 50s, they are very glued to your neck, which are nice, I love them too. But from the 60s they are kind of wide and loose from your neck and cut your neck like that, like my O.N.T or this one. This pattern uses a very interesting technique. It uses two different sizes of needles to have it folded nicely like that. And so in the 60s you often have this kind of neck. You have pictures here, pictures in the back, and in the middle you have the descriptions. Quite nice. I don't know if I will need stuff from here, but some of the stuff you can see is very neutral. You could use it in any decade and it will suit a person. These are not magazines. All of them were 20 cents of dollar, about that. And these were actually published maybe with magazines or with another newspapers. And I don't know that I have all the entire booklets, the entire leaflets here, or just the back. But I got the back of all of them, the cover and the back had always a knitting pattern, which is nice because I know that this Roca, I have the books too. There are, I think, 4 books in this collection. I have 3. And then I know that these have tapestry, they have embroidery, they have sewing, they have all kinds of crafts, and crochet, of course. But here I was lucky to get only the knitting, which is what I do the most. So some of these are out there and I don't like them very much. I don't like this one. This one is kind of interesting, maybe adjusted, but it's interesting. I don't like this one. No, there are some crochet here. This is interesting somewhat. I think this one is too much. They are using some sort of mohair here in the colors and in the fiber that they picked. I don't like it, but it would be interesting maybe in other colors and other fiber, more solid. This one, look at the hat and the sleeves, very out there, right? Maybe one could make this sweater without the sleeves or just making normal sleeves. I don't know. See, tapestry here. I really like this one. I would love to make this little dress. I think it's very universal. Other colors, of course, but I would definitely make this one. I have made some patterns from the 70s, and they are among my most liked ones. The vest, this vest, and also the Cleopatra top. I'm not very fond of 70s and 80s patterns, but I like the idea of making them work. Picking that very out there and weird thing and make them work for me, for today, and look chic. This one is kind of nice too. I don't know if I love the closed neckline and her psychopathic eyes, but it's nice. And this, at first glance, I don't like it. but I like the challenge of making this work. A very bulky crochet, maybe someday I will try just to see if it would work in real life. And kind of workable, doable, not much. No, I've seen better from this, although maybe here the problem is the fiber. Another fiber could be nice. I like the construction though. Clearly this was knitted side to side. This is what I was talking about when I mentioned 70s poses were out there. See what she's doing here? The hat is an absurd, simply. And the colors then absurd. I don't think I would make this. Maybe the pants, I don't know. Just for the challenge of it, but not looking like this in any way. This is ugly as hell. And very interesting, very 70s, very out there. I think not. I don't like that, but very 70s too. But the bold colors, the geometrics and stuff. This neutral, but not the most beautiful thing. Again, I like the diamonds, but I don't think this picked the best gauge or fiber and colors. Maybe this could become something interesting. Doesn't look very great here, at least in my opinion. But I really liked this one. I got the knitting, which is what interested me, and I was satisfied with this purchase. I had 60s from Brazil, 70s from Brazil, and I have a little bit of 80s. I think late 80s, early 90s. I wasn't able yet to find from when are these magazines. I believe that it was a book and they were together there in the store, and I thought they were the same book. Several exemplaries, but actually no. You can see there is a sequence here. The yarns here. 1, 2, 3. I don't know if there are more. They are from, I think, magazine Sandra, and I think this magazine is from Portugal. They were edited by a Brazilian publishing house, so I think it uses Brazilian terminology. But I've seen this magazine Sandra, some of their issues in those used bookstores, and they were from Portugal. So apparently it's a series of books or magazine in hardcover, Tudo in tricô. It means all in knitting. And I will show you the kind of things we have here. 80s called and asked for the mohair back. You see? Very 80s. The 80s had those big stuff, a lot of mohair, oversized. Look at that, my god. Another bunch of books that for me are more like study. And if they have the coat is interesting. The coat is interesting, and the scarf too. This is fluffy yarn, but in a more solid yarn, it could be interesting. This, not so much, you know. I mean, Spectacles Tricô. They had a lot of the kind of stuff that she makes in the 80s. Very out there. Most of these patterns from the 80s, they are huge rectangles with innovative design, innovative stitches, color, a lot of intarsia. And just huge. You had to have the shoulders to wear it. This makes me think this is probably from early 90s or maybe like 89, 90, about that, 88 at most, because this kind of stuff, very ethnical and the black with the drawings, huge stuff. You can see this in a lot of early 90s stuff. So maybe this is from 90s. I will find out this later, and if I can't find out, I will put it in the description, the years from these books. A lot of mohair again. I won't show you everything because this has a lot of stuff, a lot of patterns. Few of them are something that I would need, to be honest, but the ones that are very interesting, and there are others that I would like to think how to make work. Color work. This is interesting. I would knit it maybe in smaller needles and smaller yarn to shrink it a little bit and make it for myself. There are some nice color work stuff for kids, very colorful. The others are kind of the same vein, the same spirit. Let me show you just here. You can see there is a pattern very similar to this from Vogue Knitting here. A collection of patterns, I believe, New York, pullover from the same time. I think it's 90s, early 90s or late 80s too. Oh my god, she looks like a chicken. But this is interesting. I love this from studying perspective, to know the techniques they use it, to learn how to recognize the style from the decades. So actually this is quite interesting. This is squareable. I would like to make this one. I would make modifications, probably shorten it and stuff, but I would like to knit this. And I like these books, the pandas here, the very colorful stuff. This is kind of interesting. Anyway, these are my Brazilian stuff. I will show you now the other stuff, which is surprising. I hope you're not bored already by the vintage magazines, but we have some more here. But I'll try to make it quick for you. Here, there are my other ones, and from the sides alone, you can see some of them are in very specific language. Yeah, let's start from the other ones. This one is 60s again. This is a German one. I don't know if it's from Germany or other country that speaks German, but the entire magazine is in German. If you are German and you know which magazine is this, which this means or something, which yarn company worked with it, please tell me. As the other magazines, it has that familiar structure that we have the pictures in the beginning, some in color, some in black and white, pictures in the end, and in the middle you have the instructions. You have knitting and crochet in this one. They have a lot of tank tops and vests in the 60s and 70s. This is probably from the second half of the 60s going to 70s, but they have a lot of those straight, very straight, bra-friendly stuff. The triangle again, the A-line dress. Look at this one, look at this hair, my friends, look at this hair. And also the very strong eye makeup. In the 60s you have a lot of this, very strong, very noticeable eye makeup and nothing in the lips. Another A-line dress, stripes too, the turtleneck, the colors, my friends, the colors. This is a suite, and this is another suite in crochet. Very simple, it seems. Double crochet. The beret, you find the berets very often here, and the men stuff, still a lot of cardigans for men, the colors, and there is a lot in here. I would keep showing it to you for a long time, but let me show you some that I find particularly interesting. These cardigans, very today, very wearable. You see a lot of raglan sleeves. I don't know, no, this is still satin sleeve, but in the others you see a lot of raglan sleeves. The A-line dresses here, the tops too, the tops I was talking about, the tank tops with wide straps. They call it shells, I think. I would like to make this one. It has the same stitch from the borders of my Avalon sweater, you see, but all over. Very cute. It's the trompe-l'œil cables, I think. Kid stuff here, classic stuff. Bolder color work. I don't know if I would pick this exact colors, but this is interesting. The man sweater, not so much. I really like the cable stuff here. I like her cardigan, very neutral. Their stuff here, ski stuff. The kid's hair. Look what they did to her hair. Just wrap it very weirdly. And the beret here, the set. His coat is very nice here. Maybe for a woman too would be nice. Very classic here. Crochet. See? More crochet. This I'm sure is crochet, but is this? Look, you who know crochet more than me. Is this crochet? I feel like it is. It's crochet imitating knitting, but I think it's crochet. What do you say? Oh, it could be brioche too, but it reminds me of crochet ribbing. They liked some very bulky stuff in the 60s too. There are a few magazines with those over bulky stuff. The cable is not bad. And I like this one. I really like this one, this pink one. Very classy, I think. Hers, not bad either. That's it. This other one, also German, but not only. It's in German and Italian, which is nice because io imparo italiano. I have been studying Italian with Duolingo for almost 2 years now. I don't speak Italian, but I understand reading a lot and I understand a little bit of listening too. So you can see it here, ABC della Maglia, Bettina. And the interesting thing I found out after examining this one, also from the 60s it seems, is that it's from Switzerland. I didn't imagine I would find something from Switzerland here because we hear a lot about German immigration, Italian immigration, but from Switzerland we don't listen often. It occurred to me because in Switzerland I believe you have German, Italian and French and maybe something else as official languages. So this one celebrates 2 of the languages. And this is not a pattern booklet only. It has instructions. It teaches you how to knit from the very beginning, it seems. See? Casting on and double pointed needles, using double pointed needles for circular knitting, basic stitches, seaming for casting off, grafting, I believe, shaping shoulders and that kind of stuff, increases, and then we get a bunch of stitches, a bunch of basic stitches, increases and decreases to shape stuff in pattern too, see? And here, more stitches, color work, necklines, a lot of variations for V-necks, and here round neckline, square neckline, this shawl neckline I guess, and the armhole too here. More detail on color work, seaming and repairing, duplicate stitching, and here starts the pattern. See, I told you about the vest, not so different, right? Here you can see it. First you have the pattern in German, Damen gilet, and here then in Italian, gilet da donna. This is the one from the cover. They have the colorway and the kind of yarn. I think it's from Lang Yarns, you know, that still exists. If you know about Lang Yarns, if they use it to issue this Bettina stuff, please tell me. It's interesting to know. We have schematics. This magazine has very simple, very classic patterns. You could wear it any day. You see a big coat here, and then a cardigan, sweet, a nice textured pullover, twin sets, another nice pullover, this one I would like to make, and men's stuff, summer tops. The one modification I probably would have to make for this, if I were to make them for myself, would be to shorten everything, because they seem to be very long. I think these were meant for tall people. This is a very simple stitch for his pullover here, and then in the end you have more simple stitches and colorwork stitches and the back this here. And you have then a lot of Japanese stuff. Yeah, I have been interested in Japanese knitting, not necessarily stuff from current Japanese designers, which tend to knit a lot of oversized, very fluttery stuff and stockinettes. I like the intricate stuff from the past. I like the Japanese Bible from Hitomi Shida. I have this book, my sister gave it to me, and it's very hard to understand how to use Japanese patterns because, see, doesn't it look like a math problem? Very much, right? And I have read just the titles with Google Translate to see, and I know that these three are from the 70s. This is 77, and the other two are from, one is 76, the other is 78. This one, it's in Japanese, but it was a translation. It's from Lana Gatto. I believe it's an Italian brand. And the interesting thing is, it's about Aran sweaters, a fisherman Irish tradition. And you have a book about an Irish style of knitting by Italian company in Japanese for Japanese knitters. Globalization is amazing. And I'm getting it in Brazil, you see. Probably from Japanese immigrants that came here. They were the previous owners of this probably. And you have descriptions about Ireland and Aran knitting, and you have all kinds of irons here. Very 70s too. This one, oh so cute. I would love to make an Aran sweater. I haven't yet made a cabled sweater for myself because it requires a lot of yarn and I would like to make it in wool eventually, but I always looking for them. I have those very classic ones for men, for women. You have, look at this, his coat, oh, how pretty. Their stuff, all kinds of different patterns. You have this long coat, her hat even. I don't like this one, kind of ugly I think. But you have stuff for men, for kids, for adults, for mom and child. Very classic iron stuff, but the patterns are in Japanese. Look at the chart. It doesn't look like a very hard chart, to be honest, among the others that I have seen. It produces, I believe, this stitch. They even have cushions here. My mom found those beautiful. Maybe I will make one for her someday. The entire thing, even socks in iron stuff. I think this is too much, but one scarf here. The beret is interesting here, and one of the scarves, not all of them, but it's a very thick, rich book. I think I will get use from here when I learn to knit Japanese patterns. Will I have to learn how to speak Japanese to knit them? I hope I won't, but if I will have to, it's not that much of a trouble. And then you have these two, which are proper Japanese. You see the style very similar, the Aran sweater and the beret. We have a lot of berets here. Looks very basic tops. This is something you could find in the street today, this kind of stuff. Colorful stuff, interesting stuff. The textured tops, the color works are interesting. I like the black one, maybe this in another color, I don't know. I like this one with the tulips, and this I really like the silhouette. I love this huge turtleneck. I don't know about this, maybe I will make it in plain. or I don't know, with other colors it might look nice. Very basic. You can see these are knitted side to side, classic stuff, fur coat, very classic. The stitches here too, classic. Aran, it's a nice art. This is with bulky yarn, things for teenagers, I believe. The others I have here are all from this Ondori. I don't know if this is the brand or anything, but I find this Ondori very often in Japanese stuff. The other one, the first pattern here, I definitely want to make it. Look at this, so cute. I don't know if I would use the same colors. Maybe I would change the white for something more brighter, and I don't know, but I really like this one. I don't know if these girls are teenagers, so this concerns me a little bit about the sizing, because sizing for Japanese patterns tends to run small. I usually knit the small in Western patterns, so maybe it wouldn't be a problem, but if they are knitting for teenagers, it might be too small. I believe there are some crochet here too. I don't know if this is knit or crochet, but I like it, this one. Maybe it is like some 70s does, 30s or 40s. And some of the stuff I don't like so much. This is interesting, maybe. Interesting too. There is stuff I love, stuff I don't like so much. A lot of crochet here. Oh, here is crochet. I don't like this so much. They are too bulky. This is very 70s. The top to down Aran look, the very long dresses. There is one that is even more characteristic from that decade. This one. Can you see? The maxi dresses from the 70s. I don't like for me, but I like this one, however. I find it very contemporary even. I think this could be a pattern that would be released today. And even this one too. I like these dresses too. This one, very interesting, looks like the 30s dresses. This two I like. This one not so much, but maybe I will probably spice them up because they are a little too modest for my liking, but they're nice. And then my last one, this is from 90s. It was the first Japanese one that I found, then I found those folders, and this here says summer and spring, I think, and it's from 91, the year I was born. And you can really see it in the bone structure, because the models they picked have very large bone structure to hold the shapes from the 70s, you see? They really liked their big wardrobe style stuff. I loved this one. This one was the one that I want to make from this, and this is interesting too, but I prefer this if I had to choose. This is what I was talking about. I love the lace, the complex stuff. This is crochet. Simple one. My mom loved this one. It's mostly made from double crochets and chains and some decor. You'll find a lot with this shape too. I think the construction is a little bit different from here. Maybe you build this and then this. I don't love this here too much, but this is interesting. Although it's, you see, the wardrobe stuff I said, they like it, I think, tall structured models, and then they picked tall structured models for these two because it was the fashion of the time. This is very cute. It's the cover, and they have the stitches here and the patterns here, and that's it. This one I would love to make this one, and then the advertisement from courses. I hope it didn't tire you out with all of this. Let me just say goodbye. So folks, that's what we had for today. Very little knitting, a lot of stuff for the future, and a lot of old knitting, a lot of magazines, and I hope you enjoy seeing them. I hope I didn't bore you out with those because I was talking about each of them. And well, tell me, what did you find about today's stuff that I shared with you? How have you been? What have you been knitting in these 2 weeks in which we didn't talk? I hope I edit this soon, because I miss talking to you guys, and stick around to see the rest of what is being built here. So be happy, be healthy, happy knitting, and I see you in the next one. Bye bye.